Okay, everybody, welcome to the More Perfect Interview Series. I'm your host, the More Perfect Union, also known as Mike. And I am pleased today to have a couple of conservatives with me who are going to talk about the precinct strategy. And first of all, I'd like to introduce Jim Swenson. He lives in Barron County. And our special guest today is Dan Shultz, and he's going to tell us, he's from Tempe, Arizona. He's going to tell us about the precinct strategy. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show.
Hi, Mike. Howdy.
So, if for the benefit of the people that are going to be consuming this, is going to go up on YouTube, tell us a little bit about what the precinct strategy is and how you came to formulate this process.
Well, I grew up in Buffalo County, Wisconsin, and in 1968 and 1969, I was in seventh grade. And in then called social studies, which used to be called maybe government and basic American civics, they taught us basic American civics. And my teacher taught us, I went to a real small high school and junior high, and there was about 45 or 50 kids in my class. And so we had a full-blown 2-semester government and civics and this newfangled thing called social studies. If you use the word social in front of another word, social negates the word that follows, like social studies or social labor or social security. Social always negates the word that follows. And anyways, but nobody knew that back then. It was new.
Yeah,
So
I remember taking social studies when I was in high school, and we had to do it in the ninth grade, and then we moved on to, state history, U.S. history, and U.S. government and stuff like that. Right? At least we got some more of the civic stuff later on.
yeah. So anyways, in seventh grade, we were taught. They didn't just show us line and block charts of government entities. This was 1968 and 1969, the summer of love, and federal revenue sharing was just getting started under Nixon, and but we were taught not only how government worked at that time and the relationship between small towns in Wisconsin and counties and the state government and the federal government, but we were also taught how the political parties affected that. And the way the political parties affect that, obviously, is the political parties are the entities that we use to elect people. Each party has candidates and they want their candidates to win. So if you really wanted to impact that, we were taught the way to get involved back then, it was called becoming a ward captain. That's what precinct committeemen were called back then, at least in Buffalo County. And then there might have been alderman wards as well, and maybe even precincts. The terminology varied across the state. And at the end of the course, our teacher basically said this to us: look, I've equipped you now so that when you get to the age when you can vote, and I can't remember if it's 68 and 69, they had lowered it to 18 at that point or not. I think it might have still been 21. But regardless, he said, I've equipped you now with the knowledge that you will need if our country ever gets into a political crisis where it's, things are really going haywire politically. You now know what to do. You pick the political party of your choice and get involved in it as a voting member of it. So you can not only make that party follow its platform or change the platform if need be, but you also will be in the best position to get out the vote in those very low turnout primary elections to elect better people. And that's what he left us with. And so I never forgot that. Well, here we are many moons later, and we're in a political crisis. And if we don't change things, if we don't change the Republican Party back into the Republican Party instead of what it is now, which is part of the Uniparty, if we don't start electing better Republicans, I guarantee you we're going to go right into socialism. It's happening right before our eyes. And so the antidote is get conservatives to take over the Republican Party. The Republican Party is there for the taking because there's about 400,000 of these slots all across the country, and only about 200,000 are filled. And it's been that way since 2007 when I got involved here in Arizona. There's been no change. People have come and gone, but the numbers haven't gone up. And it's the fault of conservatives, and it's the fault of the school system not teaching this. If I had $1 for every person I used to go to the Tea Party rallies in 2009 here when the Tea Parties came into being. And I'd have a big sign and have a flyer about, becoming a precinct committeeman. And I'd ask people, hey, I'd hand them my flyer and I'd say, have you ever thought about becoming a precinct committeeman? What's a precinct committeeman? 99 out of 100 people have never heard of don't know what a precinct committeeman is. And that's because of the school system, or else they were sleeping. And that might have been the case too. But so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to educate people through my website, through the little book I wrote in 2017. I wrote one prior to that, just an ebook prior to that, which was basically my website turned into an ebook at my website at the time. And by coming on programs like this to talk about the precinct committeeman strategy, and I also do a podcast now every day.
So for the benefit of people who may not know, I mean, we hear this term uniparty is passed around mostly by conservatives. What is the uniparty?
Well, by my estimation, the uniparty is made up of the Republicans who masquerade as Republicans, like Mitch McConnell, and in the past, John Kyle and John McCain and Jeff Flake and Susan Collins now, and the lady from Alaska, Murkowski. They go right along with the Democrats. They do not fight for our Republican principles that are set forth in our party platform. They'll write bills with the Democrats. They continuously raise the debt ceiling. They operate without a budget. They don't fight for us. They're globalists. They're sellouts. They're shipping all of our manufacturing overseas and strengthening the economies all around the world. They care about the illegal immigration happening in other parts of the world, but on our southern border, what? There's an immigration problem? What are you talking about? There's no immigration problem. We're electing people who are not really Republicans, and the reason is because we're not organized and united politically where we live in local Republican committees. How that operates varies from state to state, but I'll give you an example. My party here in Arizona, in Maricopa County, we only have 38, well, we're up to 40% of our slots are filled now, 40% out of 100%, only 40%. My legislative district committee, which has 440 slots, we have just 220 filled. But my precinct, which has 10 slots, 10 precinct committeeman slots, all 10 of those are filled. I filled them with help from others, and they're all America Firsters. If we could duplicate what I've done in my precinct in every precinct in Arizona, we'd be at 100% strength, and we would be solidly conservative instead of what we have right now. We've got a fight going on constantly in our party. About half of the slots are filled by rhinos, and about half are filled, and they don't hide it, and they don't hide who they are. It's all about numbers. Thankfully, they don't recruit very well, but we don't either as conservatives. I recruit a lot of precinct committeemen, but then I tell them, you've got to become a recruiter now. And most of them just don't, unfortunately. But if we could change it so that we got our party to 100% strength that filled that 50% of the slots that are vacant with conservatives, then instead of there being a 50-50 split and a half strength party, and I explain this all on my website, precinctstrategy.com, there would be a 75% voting majority at least in the party, and it would be 100% strength. So when it comes time to elect the county chairs and the state chairs and the national committeeman and the national committeewoman who serve on the RNC along with the state chair. Instead of having a bunch of globalists running the RNC and secretly sabotaging Trump, we would have America Firsters instead, conservatives running the RNC and supporting the president, not sabotaging him. That's the goal.
So I think the this construct, this push-pull, or this loggerheads kind of an approach that we see in the local political parties. I've seen it kind of firsthand in St. Croix County. I've heard about it, not witnessed it, but I've heard tell of it in the Pierce County as well, where it is this one side, and it could be my political naivete about Wisconsin politics, but it to me feels like there are people who want to affiliate with the party for the purpose of becoming elected and then stair-stepping or trying to get to a higher position. And it seems like the higher they go, the less likely they are to fight back or to resist, because to me, it feels like it's like personal aggregation of power for one's own purposes to advance oneself's own goals and ideas. And then once you get in office, like there was some person that's been a town chair in one of the townships, I think it was Hudson, been the town chair for 30, or he's been in the local politics for 32 years, and nothing's really changing in the town, right? Nothing changes. It's just about, well, okay, I have my own fiefdom for power, and then I'm kind of locked in. I see this back and forth where you have people that want to be more constitutional, want to be more about what the government is supposed to be, what the founders gave us, right? Those people that really paid attention in social studies, i.e. government class or whatever, right? Where we understood what the role of the federal government was, what the role of the state and local governments were to be, against these people that are okay trying to make their way through what they perceive to be the status quo. And that creates a conflict that necessarily does detract from that overall mission and goal. So you mentioned that you brought 10, you got 10 people, all of your precinct committeemen, you turned that in. How is that affecting your area? And talk a little bit more about your website and how you are bringing people into that to try to get that message out, right? Because what works well can be disseminated outbound. How are you able to get that done? And can you tell us a little bit about how successful you have been with it?
Well, when I became a precinct committeeman, I haven't moved since I became one. So I've been in the same precinct, but the precinct was smaller then. So instead, you get one precinct committeeman slot for every 125 voters of your party in your precinct. So when I became a precinct committeeman, there had been 4 slots filled of 8. 4 of 8 were filled. I became the 5th. And so then I set about attempting to recruit 3 more people. And I succeeded eventually. It took me about 2 years and I got 3 more people. So now we got to 8 slots, 8 filled. And when I got those 8 slots filled, we happened to have a mayoral election and city council election for the city of Tempe. And I devised a strategy to get out the vote. And so knowing that each of us was responsible for 125 voters, Republican voters, I decided, well, there's no way we can contact 125. But see, a bunch of those are either 100% voters or 75% voters. They usually vote in the general 100% of the time, or 75% of the time. Maybe they miss a primary here or there, the 75% voters. So we were going to try to boost turnout in my precinct with a strategy. And the strategy was, let's contact the voters, only the voters who vote 50% or less, or they're brand new voters. They've never voted in the precinct before. And that's about 45 to 50%. So we just targeted those. Well, that meant we each had to make, and some of them lived together. So we were each had to make 35 to 40 phone calls to households, reminding people, hey, there's a mayoral election. And see, in the mayoral election and city council election here in Tempe, it's nonpartisan. So the candidates put up all these signs everywhere, right? But they don't say whether they're a Republican or a Democrat, because on the ballot, there won't be an R or a D after their name. They could, but they won't. They don't, for whatever reason. I would if I was running, but I wasn't the candidate. So what we did is we contacted all the lower information, lower propensity voters, I call them LILP voters, lower information, lower propensity. They don't care about politics. And in the past, turnout in these mayoral and city council elections in Tempe had been as low as 7%. The average was about 13, 14%. Okay. So if we could boost turnout for the three Republicans who were running, one guy was running for mayor, he was a good conservative. Another guy was kind of conservative Republican, and another lady kind of conservative Republican running. So I went to the candidates and I said, I've got a plan on how to boost turnout. Thanks a lot, Dan, but we got it under control. So what did they do? They did a marketing campaign, TV ads, radio ads. They held dinners, and stuff like that. Went to speaking events.
Typical stuff.
But typical stuff, but didn't have a ground game. Well, we had a ground game, and it worked. I told each person, I only want you to do 3 hours worth of work. I've estimated it. You can make 35 to 40 short phone calls in less than an hour. And then after you make those calls, and I split the precinct up into 8 sectors, said, you got this sector, you got this sector, you got this sector, you got this sector, for dropping off flyers. And I told them which households to drop the flyers off. I use this software called GOP Data Center that the party has. And I've got a video on my site that explains this in 11 minutes. It's a narrated PowerPoint. And so we had the election. The average turnout was about 11 or 12% in each precinct in Tempe of Republicans. I'm sorry, I'm misremembering that. It was more like about 20%, 21, 22%. It was the average. But ours was like 45%. Then there was a runoff. Nobody in the mayor's race and nobody in one of the 2 city council races got to 50%. So they had to have a runoff. So we did it again in the runoff. Again, average turnout was about 20%. Ours was 43, 44%.
That's impressive.
If these 2 candidates had done what we did in my precinct and just 2 more precincts, there was 47 precincts, if I recall correctly. If they'd have done what we did in just 2 precincts, they each would have easily won. And they could have done it in every precinct if they would have focused on this. Now, the guy who was their marketing guru later said, and I had the article, and unfortunately I threw it away. And it's a paid subscription political newspaper that I don't subscribe to anymore. So I can't go into the archives and get it. But he was interviewed like as he was retiring. And they asked him, what was the most wonderful thing you ever did for a candidate? Well, it was in that Tempe mayoral race where we had this fantastic marketing campaign, but we lost. Our candidates lost. And the reason we lost is because the Democrats had a ground game, but we didn't. So I really learned my lesson there, But this works. It's just grunt work. It's there are films that we were shown in my civics class in 1968 and 1969 from the 50s, where it showed this grassroots, people driving through neighborhoods with a car with horn, big loudspeakers, and a guy like, get out the vote, Republicans, it's time to go vote. We don't do that anymore, but we could be. And so I've got like an old, on my website on the helpful links page, I've got a link to a Ronald Reagan and John Wayne Victory Squad video that they made in 1964 showing how to get out the vote in California where they lived, asking people to help boost turnout. And back then they were using mainframe computers and telephones, and cards, computer cards.
Oh yeah.
And then they'd figure out who had voted and who hadn't and who needed a ride to the polls. And then they farmed people out, and they asked just, like 3 hours, a 3-hour shift to help boost turnout. It's all about boosting turnout. Well, that's what precinct committeemen do. And then the other thing that precinct committeemen do is they get to elect who's running the show in the party. So it's a really powerful, potentially very powerful position, especially if you get a whole bunch of like-minded people, like conservatives, to fill up all the vacancies. So that's what I'm trying to do.
So I think this is something that is, let me say that again. This is something that I think recently happened in St. Croix County. A couple of years ago, Matt Bachlan was running. He was running for chair because they didn't like some of the what I guess they would term as rhinos that were in charge of the who they felt were rhinos were in charge of the party. I'm not casting an aspersion against anybody that I don't know, haven't met. But they came in and basically just sort of took over the party chairmanship. He won the party chairmanship. They put some other people out there, and then as a result, they had control, right? So they're not precinct committeemen. They were just members of the executive committee and members in the party, right? They came out and they made a lot of wholesale changes that time will tell, but it seems like it's had a pretty positive impact on what they were able to do. I think they were under 100 members when they came in. They have over 300 now. Their goal is to get to 500. So they're trying to do things, but they want to bring people in who are conservative, who are constructionists or whatever, who are constitutional conservatives, and they want people to come in and actually do that work. So they've done a lot of work for ground game. They made a lot of phone calls, even though Dan Kelly was running for Wisconsin Supreme Court. He didn't win. He lost by quite a margin. But in St. Croix County went for Dan Kelly in that election, and it was because they were making, thousands of calls, right? So they were doing this ground game stuff that you're talking about. And it's interesting, right? Because I remember, I don't remember the 60s. I was a small child. And I wasn't able to vote until the 80s, but I remember listening in school, listening to the speeches that Reagan gave, right? And it was an impressive thing. And you hearken back to it to say, okay, well, it literally is just that simple. It's just that simple to, say this takes effort, and trying to identify people who are willing to that have that right mindset, who are willing to put the additional time in. It's not just enough, I think, for people to think that, well, the world's gone to hell in a handbasket, but there's nothing we can do about it. We have to always believe that there's something we can do about it. And you're describing a strategy that, while very simple, is really the key to getting more people involved in a very positive way. So, assuming that we can turn the tide, that we can blunt the effect of rhinos, that we can get more homogeneity, I guess is probably a better word, more common, aligned thought within the Republican Party in the conservative movement. How the take from the left is always going to be that we are racist, that we are sexist, that we're anti this, anti that, and everything else. How do you convince the people that are in power that they need to rethink their strategy and kind of adopt this mentality that the government is for, by, and of the people, for and by the people, and not be afraid of this label that we know the left is going to put out at them, because that's what the left has always done. They've always attacked, even people like, oh my God, who's the guy who was a House Speaker? Paul Ryan in Wisconsin, from Wisconsin, right? He studied under Jack Kemp, who was a pretty significant conservative from the fiscal side of things, right? He was a very big fiscal hawk. And Ryan studied under him, but when he became Speaker of the House, he sort of rolled over, right? Yeah. And even then, even though he was basically a rhino, right, when he was running as the vice presidential candidate in 2012, the left rolled over top of him. They accused him, put in an ad. They sort of pretended that he was pushing grandma over the cliff with respect to Social Security. So how do conservatives combat that kind of message? And then, Jim, I want to bring you in also as well to kind of talk about what goes on in Barron County as well. But anyway, go ahead,
Yeah,
Dan.
you can't change them. The only way you can change them is to change them out at the primary. You get them out of office and put in a better person. Once they're in, they're not going to change. They become part of the uniparty. Paul Ryan was never going to change. The only way he changed was he decided to drop out and get out of the House of Representatives. That's the only way to change them. You got to peacefully change them out. Take them out. Take the garbage out. Replace them with somebody new, who's better, who's not beholden to anybody. That's the power of the precinct committeeman. Look, if we filled up all the vacancies, my goodness, the incumbents then might start thinking, holy crap, I might be taken out at the next primary.
Well, wasn't that really
have this cushy job anymore?
Wasn't that really the thing that scared the hell out of people about the Tea Party? Is that they came in like a tidal wave, right?
Yeah, but unfortunately, the Tea Party got co-opted by the establishment, paid off people like Jenny Beth Martin and all the rest of them, Mark Meckler, Debbie Dooley. I talked to all of those people and told them, if you really want to do something, number one, first, don't start a 501. Why would you want the IRS to know? Why would you want to report what you're doing to the IRS? Take all of the money you're going to spend on politics and put it into the Republican Party and take over your local committees. Then you don't have to have any 501. Just keep growing your network of Tea Parties, build a communications network, and then take over your local Republican Party committees and do all of your politics inside the Republican Party itself. Do your strategizing at your local Tea Party meetings. Take your politics into, let's see, if I wanted to go into do political stuff, maybe I should do it in a political party, but they didn't want to hear that. They went like this, oh yes, Dan, we're doing that, Dan. We're doing it. I've got the emails to prove it. And they weren't doing it because they wanted to make money. They were charlatans. Okay. So what we've got to do is what I just advised. We've got to get everybody who really wants to do something, take your wanting to do something for whatever your issue is. Tea Party stood for taxed enough already. They wanted to lower taxes and lower spending. And I'm all for that. Everybody is. Take that issue into the party itself. The Tea Parties all across the country, they had enough membership where they could have filled every vacant precinct committeeman slot, but the leaders weren't interested because they wanted to make money. So
the idea then behind that really, and I've argued, I said, we talk about like the failure of education, the failure of what the localities are doing, the lack of responsibility, the problems with crime. All of these things stem from a couple of very basic issues that always come back to the smallest part of our government, which is the locality. So yeah. I've always said, you need to take over your school board. You need to take over the thing. Yes. You're actually pulling that one step back, one step further upstream and saying, you have to control the mechanism by which those people get elected or get even nominated or become successful within the party structure.
Exactly. If you look, when we conservatives start winning school board elections everywhere, the rest of the elections will take care of themselves. If we're so organized and united politically, locally, in every school district to know which candidates for school board we need to go vote for, because they're way down the ticket. Most people don't know who those people are.
They have spent no time researching.
But if the people who support the good ones would become precinct committeemen and then recruit everybody who supports those good school board candidates to also become precinct committeemen and get involved in the committees, and then tell the other precinct committeemen who also might not know. Because like in my legislative district, we have 3 or 4 different school districts that are inside the boundary of my legislative district. So you get some people are in this district and some people are that one and so forth. But if we all got together as precinct committeemen and then knew who those school board candidates were and boosted turnout for them, we'd really have something. But it's, I say that conservatives suffer from this made up malady, CPPPDS, Conservative Political Party Participation Deficit Syndrome. They don't participate.
Yeah, I think people feel, and I disagree with it, right? I mean, I'm not actually, I'm not yet a member of any party in Wisconsin, but I have been doing a lot of stuff with the channel, working with stuff. Well, Jim is kind of pointing his finger at me, and you're right. You're right. I need to get involved with the Pierce County Republican Party, which I have reached out to them a number of times, several times via email, and it's always just kind of they don't act like they're that interested in having new people. And I've heard that there are people that, well, I think they even passed something. Somebody told me, I don't know this, got to look it up. Somebody told me that they passed something in their local constitution that they have the right to vet you before you can come in. So that's kind of a mechanism by which they will, I don't know, purity test, if you will, to do that. So I'm not getting a lot of feedback from them. So I don't know if they want me or not, right?
But that's after the initial caucus meeting, or any Republican can come and participate. And then they have their election. Then after that, they might be able to vet you.
Well, that's changed somewhat, Dan. That's
okay.
Well, yeah, it's a little. I mean, it's a little more quirky now. For lack of a better word, right?
Here's the other thing: there's strength in numbers. Take every conservative go as a big group and say, "Hey, we want to volunteer and help the Republican Party." You got 50 people, or they're going to say, "Oh, well," and there's only 20 at the, the 20 are going to tell the 50, "No, we don't really need you, but thanks for coming."
Yeah, that's actually that's interesting, right? Because the whole strength in numbers. And again, it's exactly to your point. You want to affect the change. You have to be the change you want to affect, right? You have to bring people into that mix. So it's you're kind of inspiring me to get off my duff and actually go in and pay them the $20 and just see if they want to reject me. I guess I'll let them reject me, but I think they probably want the $20.
Then you too can be a $20 rock chucker.
Whatever it takes, right? Whatever it takes. So, Jim, you have faced some challenges in your county. Tell us a little bit about how you've sort of helped to morph that around to something that is more, I guess, forward leaning.
Well, first, I guess I'd like to explain a little bit of difference, what happens in the states like Arizona and what happened in Wisconsin. What Dan said was true when he was a kid here, and when I was a kid here, his precinct committeeman project was an elected position in Wisconsin. That's how he and I became to know each other. Okay, I called him up one day and through a lot of investigation, we found somewhere along the way, this was a statute-driven program that had been sort of just ripped out of the books, not talked about, and forgotten. Okay, it does not exist today in Wisconsin. They're trying to replace it with another project that sort of runs along the same path, but instead of running parallel, keeping the party system in check, that it plays for the same team. Okay. Once again, we have to play by the rules of the game to reinitiate rules once you would have enough control. So the structure in Wisconsin works as a party system based at the county level. Counties report then to the congressional district level. We have 8 congressional districts in Wisconsin. Those congressional district levels then have 2 seats that report to the what we call the Republican Party of Wisconsin Executive Committee. Okay, that's the structure in Wisconsin. Now, when I grew up in politics, it was like Dan said, signs on top of cars, bullhorns. You know, my dad ran campaigns. It was a blast. It's changed a lot, and but we work virtually similar to how Dan explains, and that is the tough part. Wisconsin has a program that, like how he had mentioned, rates voters 5-4 or 4-3-2-1. How many times they voted in the last 4 elections. It's a program that they purchased through an independent vendor at the RNC level. The RNC level then sells it to the or provides it. I'm not sure if there's a financial reward or not, to the state level. RPW then will offer it up to me at the county level for my local candidates, for my statewide candidates, for even like the Supreme Court race. And people can smile and dial off of this list that's provided. However, what I've found is most people are doing is updating their list instead of knocking on the doors. Okay, it takes too much time. So who benefits from that? Well, the final list holder, because as you all are aware, these lists are worth money. Okay, so it turns back into a money game. But yeah, effectively, you know, Barron County here where I am, I started out, I'd hurt my hands and walked back into the Republican Party headquarters, and over the last handful of years, we've gave it a total makeover. You know, Barron County, if you're a Republican candidate, you're gonna score in that 60 to 67% Republican majority. That's just what coming here is. But the scary part is when I dig into the demographics, there's about 40% that are not involved at all. I'm one of those guys that would rather see everybody voting, even if they were voting for the blue, because then I at least have someone to turn into a Republican.
Sure.
Okay. It makes my job a little harder to go turn over rocks to go, who's under there? So in the process, I create other events, like we were one of the first Second Amendment rallies that brought people out of the woodwork. Barron County's not 50,000 people, and we had rallies on an afternoon in the summer that would hit 700 people. Okay, so it was sort of a here's my cheese, rifles and guns. Come on in, listen to my message, and win my guns. So we always create 40, 50 new members off of things like that. It is hard to sell that 40% that's uninvolved because they felt like they are left behind, that their vote doesn't matter. And that stems from 50 years worth of apathy, like Dan said. The school district doesn't teach civics. They haven't since he was probably a graduate of high school. And like you said, it turned into social studies, and the best thing we had was called the Weekly Reader, you know. Yeah. So
I remember that.
yeah, it's a lot of hard work. But we use this structure at the county level. We're elected officers in what we call at-large positions. Each county's a little bit different, and we do that every 2-year cycle. So you can be elected, you can run for chairman, vice chairman, treasurer, secretary, etc. And it's not that we're responsible for precincts or wards. We pretty much try and blanket the whole county. In my county, we have monthly meetings. We also have executive committee meetings that are the driving fiduciary responsibility of the party. Okay, so it's a business, and if some of these counties take it willy-nilly, Some of them don't. Um,
So
so
I wonder, just kind of musing here among the three of us, but I wonder if the people that get elected to like executive committee, we talk about the at large. So we got, people that are, the primary officers, and then you have the, I don't want to call them secondary, but you have the at large members. Everybody's giving their reports in the monthly meeting, right? And in some counties, like St. Croix County, I think they make their executive meetings are public to the maximum extent that they can possibly do them. So they'll pick a public place, and all the members can go in there and ask questions or whatever. They can also hear what's going on. I wonder if using that as an opportunity to have maybe county chairs begin to talk to their EC board members and talk about, in addition to what you're doing, like if you're a committee person or you're on a committee or whatever, and the committee chair is going to give that report, maybe if you can also talk about the things that you're doing to bring more conservatives into the meeting, and do that as kind of, not to chide them, for lack of a better word, but to say, this month I talked to 6 new people about what we were doing and why it's important. And I got 2 of them to come in and talk to somebody about membership. To use that, right? Almost make it, when I was a kid, I lived in Virginia, we used to band trips. We used to sell Wisconsin cheese and sausage. I'm very familiar with the state from a long way back. But, we would go out and literally talk to everybody about this thing, and there was a prize at the end of it, and the prize at the end of it seems to me like for the local parties is, can you get more membership, and can that membership be effective at getting conservatives elected?
well, it can.
Exactly.
It can. Once again, in these county structures, everybody that's in the county structure in Wisconsin is a member of the county party. That county party are the ones that elect the chairman and the at-large positions amongst that group. Okay, so and some of these protections that you heard about in specific counties now, they feel the conservative constitutionalists coming. Okay, so now they're starting to protect themselves. Well, Barron County has its own constitution for our party that we run by, because it is an organization, an organized business in a nutshell. So, but now it says, like in mine, you have to be a member in good standing to become a delegate, and delegates are chosen at the county caucus and then move to the district caucus and then can go to the state conventions. Okay, what these specific counties are doing, and they're starting to define good standing as things
Subjective. It's becoming more subjective, right? Rather than objective criterion.
Thou shall not speak bad about another Republican elected official. And if you speak harshly about them, you will be removed from the party for a minimum of 2 years.
Didn't that just happen in Arizona?
No, it's happening all around us. I mean, this game started down in Racine County, where Robin Voss's home county is. They're throwing people out of that party right and left. They're not taking memberships. So there's other counties that follow that lead of what we will call the establishment led counties, and they're adopting these ordinances. I'm going to put one of these contracts of the Constitution in front of a sharp attorney. I think I've threatened to send it to Dan once just to let him see it. I mean, it's laughable, and they're getting away with this. So what it allows them to do then is, not only do they control the political structure all the way up the ladder in leadership, above our county levels, from district all the way to the RNC, they also control the leadership positions. So what threatens them is our little county participants that then go vote at the congressional district levels. Okay, so if they can keep us from being in the room, well, end of game.
Yeah, and I think people don't I think maybe people don't, the average rank and file voter don't really have a clue, right? They see their party, the party puts up, candidates, and they go vote for one of those candidates in a primary, but they don't realize that there is a structural bias to the way you're describing it. There's a structural bias in that maybe the candidate that some parties or some counties want to put up isn't really the most conservative candidate that you could put up.
Well,
And I think most voters don't really understand or appreciate that nuance.
even the people that are in that district level caucus room, the delegates, some of these people have given their entire adult life and they still don't understand what they're supporting. Okay, they try and turn this caucus into about the United States congressional representative. Okay, it has nothing to do with him. This is a line on the map that periodically changes, as do the congressmen that are elected to represent it. The power in this seat of the chairman and the vice chairman at that district level, they represent at the state of Wisconsin Republican Party of Wisconsin Executive Committee. Okay, so I as a chairman currently have only one vote for one person in that executive committee, who they call the third vice chair of the RPW, who is elected by the chairman of every county in Wisconsin. Otherwise, I have no input on who that executive committee is. The chairman and the vice chairman of the districts sit on that committee, so that's 16. And so there's a few appointed positions that are in there, like a Black caucus, a Hispanic caucus, a Union caucus leader, that are appointments. We don't even know the background of where these people are. You can't find any information about them, but they get appointed and they get to vote. Okay, and they get to vote for, like, our national committeemen and women that go with the party chairman. They went to California this year and reelected Ronna McDaniel. Okay, however, I can't even reach those people. I can't reach them by email. I can't reach them by telephone number. So it's pretty much the smoke-filled room of a good old boys club. And you reach this through organization and effort and understanding. Dan's program could be very helpful, but like I said, they did away with that here in Wisconsin. They have no intention of wanting that back here. They masquerade as something else.
But I think you can part that out, right? You can dissemble that and then bring it forward within the caucus system that we have here in Wisconsin, right?
Well,
it's really about trying to identify the right people.
Our system are appointed by delegates at the county level. What we run in common with, like I get one delegate for every 250 votes that went, say, in the presidential or gubernatorial race. So a county like Barron County has about 64 delegates. I've never seen any county in the state of Wisconsin fill those delegate seats at convention. They just don't. Right. So if I show up by myself at caucus or convention, I represent all 64 votes. If you're one of my delegates and we each represent 32, etc. So the people in control right now are hoping to control the turnout of
right.
how many people are in the seats.
Yeah, because they need fewer people. They need fewer people to push their particular agenda.
Well,
so
yeah, they're all for that, as long as I'm voting their direction.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, no, I totally get that, and I saw that as being the big giant loophole when somebody explained to me how the district caucus worked, and I was just like, well, that just seems bizarre, but yeah, but if you send somebody there and then very few people and they're all aligned on the opposite side of you, you're going to have a hard day, right? Well, so the idea is to get more people that are affiliated with the common way, I'm just saying with the constitutional way of thinking, and then you can affect a different outcome.
Well, when you met me this year, we were prepping for our 7th district caucus. I ran as a dark horse, unknown until the day that I was nominated on the floor for that chairman position. Okay. It took a lot of people by surprise that were in that room. And we came within about 10% of changing that leadership without even campaigning. Okay. But like these other groups that you've mentioned, whether we talked about Tea Party or currently those groups around Wisconsin and such are called, they refer to themselves as patriot groups. Okay. They want change. Okay. But they're usually not willing to learn the rules of the game or the time that it takes to do. So give you an example, that district caucus, we're the biggest district east of the Mississippi in the United States, 26 counties. Okay. We didn't have 200 people in the room. Did not have 200 people in the room as delegates. Okay. So let's say we had some of these patriot groups that usually do fall on the constitutional side of things. If we would have had 20 to 30 more of them scattered amongst 10 or a dozen counties, you would have new leadership at the RPW level representing the 7th district. But
yeah, that's totally. Yeah, that's totally. I totally get that, and I think that is such a salient point to make, that we need more active participation. It's not, people at the county level, they went through at the caucus and they said, okay, blah blah blah, you're going to be, these are going to be our delegates. I know blah 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 is not being pejorative, but you're the delegates, and then anybody who was listed as a delegate, if you failed to go, you potentially harm your county's prospects in that district caucus. So we need to send everybody every time, and we need to, and that also goes into the identification. You want to make sure that the people that you're bringing in are very good, hard charging, will put the time and effort in. As Dan was saying earlier, you have to be willing to put the time in to make the change. Otherwise, it is just the status quo. Dan, I want to come back to you, and I want to be cognizant of everybody's time, but I want to come back to you and get a little bit more information about your website, how people can reach out to you, and any closing thoughts that you'd like to bring forward.
Well, my website's at precinctstrategy.com. And then once you're there, at the top, whether you're on your phone or on a computer, there are 3 buttons, and the middle button says connect with other conservatives in your state. You click on that to create a user account on our communications and collaboration platform, where conservatives, America Firsters can collaborate, find, like, for example, I think there's about 85 people in Wisconsin already on the system. There's over 700 here in Arizona. There's 15,400 and something nationwide. What I'm trying to do, there's 2 things that are holding us back. Number 1, we don't have enough conservatives in the party, period. There's 400,000 slots, 200,000 are vacant. If we could fill up the 200,000, that's, I've got a graphic on my site. That's 0.3% of the 74 million who voted for Donald Trump. Not 3%. Not 1%. 0.3% of 74 million is just over 200,000. Instead of going to boat parades and rallies and all of that, well, if you're going to go to those things, recruit precinct committeemen at them. So so that's the message. That's the number 1 thing that's holding us back. Not enough people. And then the second thing has been, in the past, the RNC won't give us communication software. They don't want the precinct committeemen in Barron County, or your delegates. They don't want the delegates easily communicating with one another, because then they can go, hey, I'm sending out an email to all the delegates. I'm going to be voting for this guy. Will you? This guy's like the real deal. How about you? Let's take a poll. Well, you can do that on my site now in any state. You can set up a chat room and talk about stuff like that. You can share documents. Software like that does exist, and the Democrats have it. But the RNC won't license software like that for the state parties. They just won't, and they never will. So luckily, my friend Robert Beatles interviewed me after he saw me in a war room and created it for us. It's real simple. It's easy to use. And there's a tutorial video that you can watch even before you sign up, which is linked on my site. So I've tried to do this. I've tried to put everything on my site that the RNC ought to have on its site. Why and how to become a precinct committeeman, how to find your local committee, and then a communications tool. That's all on my site. None of those things are on the RNC's website. And many of the state party websites don't have anything like that either. It's always, here's, there's a pulsating donate button. That's what you see. Yeah. Donate, donate, donate. But not, hey, there's a vacancy down where you live in your county. You could get involved in your county committee. You could, become part of the process. They won't tell you that. They want you to help the candidates. They want you to volunteer for grunt work, maybe answering the phones, and they want your money. But they're not going to tell you how the party works. But I do. And I also have on my site, like I've got some links for Wisconsin, but I don't have really good information for Wisconsin. I'm trying to get it from people like Jim, where like somebody tell us, how does it work in Wisconsin? I need a document that says, okay, here's how you get involved at the county, and then you go to the district, and then you go to the state. And then, of course, there's the appointees, the cronyism. That needs to all be explained. Now, I did this for Arizona. This is a power chart. Here are the voters. They elect precinct committeemen, and then the precinct committeemen elect the electors of the state chairman, and then they elect the electors of the RNC national committeemen and national committeewomen, and then they elect the county officers and their legislative district committee officers. It's all explained here. And then on the flip side is a narrative explanation of it. I need one of these for every state on my website, but I don't have time to do it for every state. There's a few states that have something like this, but if I had enough money, I'd hire like law students in each state and I'd give them a template. Okay, here's what you need to do. Go get the state election code, get the bylaws for your state party and maybe your county parties, and then create charts like this for your state. You can do it in an afternoon. I did this with, PowerPoint, graphics. It's not hard to do, but why aren't these things on the RNC's website? Because they don't want us to get involved. They don't want us to know anything about this.
You figure that the simple things, right, that people aren't doing, but
we have to do it. And so I've tried to do that at precinctstrategy.com.
Okay. That's awesome. Jim, any final thoughts? I appreciate, first of all, very much appreciate you making the introduction here with Dan. Dan, a pleasure to get to know you. You've actually, I consider myself a pretty intelligent person, but you've given me something else to think about. And any time that I can get that out of any conversation I have with somebody else, I consider that a win-win for me. And hopefully the viewers out there, they will get the same take from it. I think that there is definitely actionable stuff that you are bringing to the table that can be translated into something that can be done here in Wisconsin. And I'm going to as a result of this conversation and the need to be more involved, I'm going to hit up Stephanie, who's the chairman of the Republican County Party for Pierce County, and I'm going to become incredibly vocally active. So, and try to find out who I can drag along for the fun. So, gentlemen, I want to thank you very much, Dan Shultz from Tempe, Arizona. He has a project or an effort that he is engaged in called the Precinct Committeeman Strategy. And you can find him on his website. I'll post that out for everybody to get a hold of. And then I want to also thank Jim Swenson, who is deeply involved in Barron County local party politics. So I didn't want to say anything because you didn't want me to say anything or whatever. But in any case, I thank you very much for the opportunity to meet you, Dan and Jim. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And thank you guys so much for being a part of the More Perfect Interview series. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Dan.
Okay. If you like the interview you just watched, Join us on twitch.tv/The More Perfect Union for more constitutional and conservative views on politics in the United States. Like or subscribe our YouTube channel as well. Take care.